about great coaches in America, I can flat out tell you right now, you got Pete Carroll and Jim Tressel where you're going to be, baby. These guys are awesome. And I used to do a Southern voice that was very easy to do. Our coach before Coach Tressel, the infamous coach who canceled the last USC game with lightning.
Yeah.
Coach John Cooper.
What's up with that?
Hell, I love it down at Ohio State. People always say, hell, I didn't know you could do my voice, Coach. I said, hell, I can do the voice, there just ain't no damn money in it.
I've always had a knack to do voices. It goes back to Johnny Carson when I was a kid. I've always made it, but I used to tell people when I do banquets and that, which is a true story, I started at Ohio State in 1981 as a student. And if everything goes well this quarter, I'm very proud to stand up here as a junior. I never graduated. I've got 179 hours in, but I found out at 45 you are an alumni, so I can bitch to everyone else about it just like you folks can. But I never impersonated Woody while I was living. I did do a speech with Coach Bob Bass, baseball, engaged with that. And my last point I'll tell you is obviously there's some good specials out there, but very limited of work in terms of a video on Woody, but I still studied. I would hand it out this week. The BBC has a great one when Woody allowed himself to be mic'd around 1975 before the Miami Hurricane game. Woody at his probably one of his strongest suits there with Archie in his heyday sitting in A-deck, and I'll do a little bit from that. There's a great one. Woody's last public speech is on the echoes of the Oval, where Woody talks about paying forward. And I'll end with that today real quick. Woody from 75 talking about his love of Ohio State. You guys want to come in here a little bit? Huddle up. Huddle up.
Huddle up.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, the older I get, quite honestly, the least I care what the naysayers and the doomsayers are going to write or say about Woody Hayes. Honestly, as long as they go out there and I give these youngsters an honest chance for getting an education and learning through the game of football, and believe you me, that you do learn through football, I don't much care what they're going to write or say about Woody Hayes, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, oftentimes I get myself in trouble with my mouth at this university, and I'll say something that's often misconstrued, but I'll say it publicly again. Folks, I wish everything brought as much fun and dedication and joy and commitment and just downright fun as football does for Columbus, Ohio, and the great, great Ohio State University. Ladies and gentlemen, if all of our extracurriculars did what football did, it makes for a greater place to grow and be a part of. And I say that publicly, and a lot of people think at the university we're a little snobbish over in the athletics. I don't much care. For those that think we are snobbish at Ohio State, we are. To the fact that we like to outwork people, and I despise, ladies and gentlemen, to get beat. Moving on to tonight's ball game, we haven't beat FC since 1974. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, as I came over today, think about it, and it's not that often that we enter a ball game of this magnitude on the national stage in our own stadium, 7-point underdog.
Yeah.
It didn't happen in my
Stop
day
with
a
that.
lot, and it's happening again, and quite frankly, folks, it is a disrespect for Ohio State. And on one hand, I understand it, because we haven't won the big games. We have lost. Jim is now 0-6 against the top 10 teams the last 6 times he's played. He's not got it done. And you know, when I was the coach, I wasn't much liked. We all knew that. Because if it was the way it was, I told it, and oftentimes there weren't those who wanted to hear the truth, but we let it happen. But it's a big ball game tonight, and Bill had asked me, you know, Coach, what wins big ball games? And Woody used to say it against that team up north, and you could put it in anything in life, but in the big ball games, this is what wins it. The team that hits the hardest, that starts the fastest, the team that plays on great emotion, that doesn't turn that football over, and capitalizes when another team does have a turnover. If you go out there and you give it to them, you keep taking it to them, hell, at Ohio State, we can't be beaten.
Yeah!
Now, if you come out there with the university colors on, and you have a little sway with you, and you think just because you're from Ohio State you're going to go out and win, A word I used to tell those youngsters, even back with Archie and Rex Kern and them, is if you do it in life, I'd always defined it as complacency. And ladies and gentlemen, complacency, when we meet our attainable successes, you forget about what got you there. And if you become complacent in business and forget to shake hands and say hi and say thank you and work hard, oftentimes you'll see your sales drop. And on the football field, it's the same way. I've often felt people would say, Woody, were you a good football coach? And I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if I was a good football coach. I was around extremely gifted athletes. And I surrounded myself with great football coaches. Our football coaches who work 12 to 14 hours a day to get the betterment out of our youngsters. And I always looked at that and said, well, and you got to have a little bit of luck on you. And you know, I always said you win with people. You win with people. Most times, and I bet Pete Carroll, who was an assistant to Coach Bruce here back in the 80s, we all get pretty much the same talent. It's what you do with it and how you motivate it and how you get them together. Oftentimes, and I felt last year, that team underachieved because in those, and I've had some of those teams, when you have the big names, when you have those fellas now that should have went out, they did nothing to help themselves. Boone, Laurinaitis, none of them. And I wonder if they had that dedication. They come back to haunt us. So oftentimes, they'll say, well, our years that you didn't have the no names, oftentimes those are your better years.
Yeah.
And I hope, but you know, I've been dead now since 1980. And if I didn't tell you I wasn't worried about tonight, I'd be lying. I'd be lying. You're darn right, yeah.
All right.
Let me get a drink of water.
Yeah.
Bill, I'll take a couple QAs here too at the end.
Any questions for the coach?
Not yet. I'm gonna let me close the
Not yet. The answer is no.
No Clemson questions. One of